Okay, we are live.
Thank you, Mosse. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Product People's Thursday morning event. I'm Utkarsha, and I'll be your host for today. So a little bit about myself. I'm an associate PM with Product People, having around 2 years of experience in product and project management. I joined the team and community in November last year, and since then I've worked with multiple clients ranging across real estate, MarTech, micromobility, logistics, etc. So yeah, that's me. And I'll briefly start with the agenda for today. So initially, I'll introduce Product People and what we do. We'll then start with the presentation, which will be followed by a short Q&A session. So about Product People, we are a product management consultancy, and we help companies efficiently discover and deliver great products faster. We empower our product community to share knowledge generously. We invite product leaders to share their experience around product management, and our community has now over 6K members. So we also help companies through product management consulting, and we do all the hands-on and unglamorous work of a product manager on interim basis, and our contracts usually last from 3 to 36 months. We onboard fast, aligned teams, and deliver outcomes. So as you can see, Scout24, Zalando, Bishare, Finiata are some of our clients, among others, with whom we have worked and are currently working with. We work with companies of all sizes, from startups to corporates, and across different industries. And we are also currently hiring for 2 roles, product manager and talent acquisition managers. So if you're looking for new opportunity, feel free to apply at productpeople.join.com. So today, we are glad to welcome Benjamin, CPO at LIQID, and he'll be sharing with us his knowledge and experience about systems thinking and product innovation. Thank you, Benjamin. We look forward to your presentation. So
thank you,
I'll
Akarsha.
stop sharing this screen and hand it over to you.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
So let me just share my screen. And I hope you can see the screen. What I wanted to do today was spend a little time on a topic I think is actually really important for us as product people. It's a way of thinking about the world, and I wanted to kind of explain a little bit why I think it's important now for us to really consider this, and also kind of give us some tools or methodologies for how we can apply this in our own organizations. So just a little bit about me. Why am I qualified to talk about this topic? Systems thinking really originated in biology. I'm a biologist by training. I got my BSc in Edinburgh in bioscience, in biology, in ecology. And then I went on to do a master's at the LSE, which was in social sciences, social science and information systems. And there I learned more about systems thinking as a methodology used within social science. And I've used that kind of implicitly throughout my career in different places. I got started at the Associated Press. I ran their mobile division. I moved over to Nokia, worked there for a number of years. And then I've been in startups in Berlin for the last 10 years. I've been at LIQID, my current employer, for over a year and a half coming up to as CPO. And we've just raised our Series D, which is over $100 million to help us scale. So this is exactly kind of methodology that I use kind of implicitly when we think about how we build our products. The guy down there is Peter Checkland. He's a guy who will come up a little bit later. He's not much to look at, but and he's not one of the originators of the idea of systems thinking, but he is one of the people who came up with a methodology for applying systems thinking into different industries. So I think it's important to kind of put him here. And then I guess the question is why systems thinking? Why now? I mean, we have lots of other types of methodologies we can use. And I guess I would start by a statement that I believe we're living in volatile uncertain, complex, and ambiguous times. You may have heard of this kind of phrase, VUCA, in the past. And I think more and more, as I look at in the realm of politics or policy or regional development or lack thereof, wars going on, and also kind of environmental disasters happening, I think that's really true. And I think that we have a role in playing in helping and living and creating methodologies that work within these kind of uncertain or complex times. Just as an example of what I mean by that, I mean, here is a beautiful chart by Deloitte on kind of product methodologies as they stand here. And you can see, you can probably kind of find in here one that you like, but I think the reality is here that it's a very complex field, and there's a lot there's a lot here that we can start on. Not everything is perfect. There is no perfect, right? Same here with the platforms that we use to run our own systems on. I mean, these charts here are 5 years old, but they kind of share the similarity in the fact that the ecosystems of systems we build our systems on are complex. And you know, my question is when should running an online shop, which is kind of what you would need a lot of these for, when should it be more complicated to run an online shop than to run a nuclear reactor? And I think that's the state we're in, is that there's a lot of interdependentness. I look at Nireyal, and I remember reading his book very early on, Hooked. If you haven't read it, do read it. It's what a lot of Silicon Valley used to build products that hook people in to using psychological tricks to using and becoming dependent on their products. And I think, you know, the reality is Nir then realized that there is a second or a third order effect of releasing a book that helps people get hooked on products. And I think he might have felt bad, or he might have felt a need to then release a book that helps people reduce their dependency on the products that people were building to get them hooked. So I kind of think that there's something here about understanding the second order, the third order impacts of the products that we're building. And ultimately, you know, I think, you know, I come from a school that says, you know, we can use reductive methodologies, which is a lot of what we do as product people. And we may be successful, like Nireyal with his book Hooked, right? We can break down the psychological tenets, we can break them down into rules, and we can build tools that help hook people to our products. And we will be successful, but not necessarily in the ways that we expect. And I think that's the reason why I think systems thinking has a role to play in helping us understand how we can get to be successful, but in ways that we expect. Mencken said this in a much more concise way. He said, for every complex problem, there's an answer that's clear, simple, and wrong. And I think that's, you know, if ever you feel yourself that you know everything, that everything's super easy and clear, then you will be wrong. Whether you're successful in the short term or not is not a question. But let's start again. So we've explained a little bit why I think it's important to talk about systems thinking, but what is systems thinking? And I think it's important, or the way I like to approach knowledge is to understand where it comes from and where it leads to, because, you know, system thinking really comes from kind of Enlightenment, 1600s to 1800s, really understanding the kind of the breakdown of the fundamental building blocks of our natural world. And it was really consolidated by an Austrian biologist, Bertalanffy, in the 40s or late 30s, into a kind of general systems theory. Bertalanffy was on the wrong side of the war, so he's a little bit of a bitter pill that we have to take. We may not accept his politics, but he did do a lot to help understand how systems work, and that knowledge, after the war he moved to the US, that knowledge then became part of different thinking that informs our world today. Schools of thought like game theory or cybernetics, chaos theory, social systems theory, and so on, and even down into kind of newer age type thinking around how organizations are built to become learning organization, the kind of works of Peter Senge. So in general, systems thinking, while it's not as, while it hasn't had the kind of recent following that other methodologies or frameworks have had, and it kind of, I would say, went quiet in the 80s and 90s. It has led to areas of research that I think have been very helpful in kind of elucidating just the complexity of whether it's economics or neurophysics or anthropology or mathematics. And that's why I think that there is a place in our toolkit for systems thinking. So let's just talk a little bit about, where we stand at the moment. And we spend a lot of time in kind of analysis and analytical thinking. And the way that we do that is, as product people, we break down big topics or big complex issues into smaller issues, down to things like stories that can be easily worked upon. So that's kind of the way that we work, and this is the kind of the way that we have been kind of taught to think or think in general, is that we have kind of a goal, and then there are factors that lead into that goal. And that's that can be considered kind of laundry list thinking. We go through, we look at the factors, but when we really question this, we see that actually it's a little bit more complicated, because if I have academic success, well, then I might just motivate more good teachers, or I might motivate higher student motivation. And so I think when you look at the real impact, you start to see a much more complex or messy figure here. You got to see that the effect is also the cause. The academic success actually then leads to other things. These are the second order impacts. And that's what systems thinking is. In a nutshell, systems thinking is focusing on these relationships and the second order impacts. As Bertalanffy said, you cannot explain biological phenomena in parts without thinking about how interactions of the different parts themselves influence behavior as a whole. And so what we're really talking about is interconnectedness. And I just put a quick example of, one thing that we may, as product people, we may be asked to do is focused on creating a product. And the first thing we would do is, of course, go out and talk to the customers, right? I mean, that's kind of our role. And then we realize that actually the customers, they all need to finance the product, and so they need to deal with that. But they also need to buy the product, so they need to deal with the organizations that sell the product. And then you realize, actually, you know what? They also need to deal with the people who manufacture the product and the people who are going to charge the product that they work on, and so on. And so you start to build this really complex web of interrelatedness between an environment where you originally thought you had a very simple, let's go and talk to our customers approach, right? So it's just about extending what we're doing across everything. And I think, from what I would like to say is, it's really, for me, systems thinking is it just changing the way you perceive things, right? Because if I'm looking at a consumer, then I'm getting very good data on what that consumer needs, but I'm missing, for instance, the needs of, I don't know, the regulatory system. And so, while I may be understanding the top of the elephant, there are other people who are going to be looking at different parts of the elephant and understanding different things. And ultimately, we're all wrong. So it's about understanding all of those together. So that's a little bit, I'm not going to get through what systems thinking is in 20 minutes. I think we have to be realistic here. This is just a bite, a little petit four for you guys in the morning, just to have with your coffee. I'm always available to trade ideas about this, but I do want to kind of spend a little bit of time on some tools that I think would be helpful for us. Even if we don't want to go full systems thinking, there is no real systems thinking methodology for product people. That's really for us to develop in the coming years. But there are some tools that have been developed, and let's go back to my favorite Englishman, Peter Checkland, who is quite diminutive. He came up with a theory. It's not really a theory, it's a way of approaching systems thinking that helps structure it between kind of the real world and what systems thinking actually is. And the idea here is to take an unstructured problem, to try to structure that problem as much as possible. And that's really this kind of finding out or discovery phase. But then to really understand the root definition of the relevant systems that make up that problem as much as possible. And so there's ways that we can build those root definitions. And from there, we come up with conceptual models for how we can approach those systems, those definitions. That all happens kind of in our head, so to speak, right? But it's important to be clear about what that is. Then we compare our conceptual models with the problems to make sure that we're actually going to be handling the right problems or solving the right problems. Then we list out the kind of changes we want to see in reality, and then we put together an action plan to improve those. So this kind of between the real world and systems thinking, I think is really important. He also came up with an acronym. Like all good acronyms, it's all, especially for systems thinking, I don't know why they love acrostics. And if you don't know what an acrostic is, it just means that each one of these letters will stand for something. We'll see another one a little bit later. For him, when we're talking about the root definition, how do we come up with a root definition? It's to really understand these things. So who are the customers? That's natural. We're product people. We understand this. Who are the actors? Also stakeholders in a system. That's fine. The transformation, how outputs are delivered to customers. That's also part of our remit, right? It starts to get a little bit esoteric. Weltanschauung. What is the underlying worldview for this system? What are we trying to achieve? Are we trying to change people's minds? Are we trying to handle something? So I think it's really important to get a sense of what is this worldview, and to lay it out as part of the root definition. Owner, I think it's clear. We're, as product people, we understand and we define who the owner is, and environmental constraints. And I think this is also part of the kind of, so this for me, Catwoe is very natural. As a product person, this is something we kind of mostly do all day already, but we use this as a way to define the different systems. So you might use this for each part of that electronic vehicle example I gave you earlier, to really understand, okay, what are the definitions of the systems that we want to use? Okay, so that's Peter Checkland. There's another tool I want to introduce you to, and I'm going really quick because we don't have a lot of time, and I think this is kind of really helpful stuff. Iceberg model. So systems thinking is really about understanding the difference between what we see in the real world, the events, and how those events happen, right? So events are the result of patterns or trends, which are the result of structures, system structures. So what ultimately gives rise to those patterns. And also underneath all of that are the mental models that give rise to the structures, that give rise to the patterns, that give rise to the events. So this is kind of inception for product people, if you will. And I think it's really important as you kind of lay out how you look at this, is there are different questions you need to ask. So what just happened is the event, right all the way down to how does our thinking allow this situation to persist? What do we need to change in our mental model for something to change? And I think that's really important, is we have different ways of acting at the different levels down the iceberg, right? On the event, we can react to an event. That's fine. We can even get a little bit deeper and see the pattern, so we can anticipate other events in the future. But helping us understand like Nereal's issue later, when he came up with Hooked and suddenly went wildfire, and we had lots of people stuck to their phones. We have to understand the mental models, and also whether we want to transform people directly. So this is like, if you want to make big change in the world, you need to go deep down the inception here in order to get to the transformational piece. So iceberg model. I'll leave that with you, and we can come back to it. And my final one here this morning is connection circles. This is getting back to the relationships and the feedback loops in the systems. And I think what's important is that we kind of model those. And here's just a really quick way to model that. We put the things that are inputs or outputs around a circle, and then we draw lines. Green lines here I put for positively impacts, and red lines are negatively impacts. And so we can build a kind of a sense of how this works. And you can do this. You can do this with your team on a whiteboard. It's really very easy. What's important to see are feed forward loops. So without any other impact, we're going to have an increase over time unless we do something about it, right? So the important thing is to, we may not be able to ever have no unhappy customers, but it's to be able to add something into the system that reduces unhappy customers. Otherwise, we're just going to have this feed forward loop. And so, we may decide to add QA into our system here as a way to reduce bugs, which also reduces unhappy customers. Or you may have other things you want to do. So it's just a way of helping to map the different components or the interrelatedness within a system. And I think we're really running out of time. So I'm going to skip my part about how innovation works. We can do that another time. But to kind of finish on the fact that, we're still living in volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous times. We still need to think about the impact we need to have in the world, and we still need to work on the problems that are going to help us handle those. And actually, surprisingly, it was the Royal Academy of Engineering in the UK who came up with a kind of set of precepts or tenets that I think is really helpful for us to kind of use as a takeaway today. And those are, as teams, debate, define, revise, but then think holistically, and to use a tool like systems thinking for a way to think holistically about something. To follow a procedure, I think that's important. We as product people, we come up with our procedures over time. Be creative. Take account of the people. The people are the part in systems thinking. They're a component in that, and we need to keep them there. And you saw that in Catwo as well. And then when we talk about managing the project and the relationships within the project. So I think that those are kind of tenets that I think are very helpful for us as product people, not just as engineers, but product people as well. And so I would say, just to kind of close things off and to give some time for questions, I would say thank you this morning. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening to somebody talk about an older, less excited, less moment-driven type of methodology, but one that I think can still add value to our day. And I wanted to kind of leave you with some resources. If there are things that I think would be helpful, if you want to learn more, you can reach out to me, or you can follow these links and learn more. So I will hand back to Utkarsha.
Thanks a lot, Ben. It was a very insightful presentation, and also interesting to note that we need to consider the whole system when we are trying to solve the problem. So I'll just quickly share my screen and we can start with the Q&A session. So everyone who is here can ask on chat or verbally, and those who are joining us on YouTube or Facebook, we will transfer your questions here. So by the time we have questions from the audience, I wanted to ask, like, for example, we are doing user research. So what frameworks can we use to ensure that we are considering this systems thinking approach? If you can elaborate something.
Yeah, I think I think when it comes to user research, it's important to understand, you know, not just how they react to the system that you're trying to build, but to use that iceberg model to really understand how they, you know, not just what they do, but also the motivations that they have, getting right down deep into their underlying mental models, and to help understand, to help drive your kind of product discovery process by using that that kind of iceberg model as one. That would be kind of a start.
That's it. Thank you so much. So you mentioned you would wanted to talk about the innovation part. So just to quickly ask, like, how would you say that we can apply this systems thinking approach, and that could result in innovation and generating new ideas?
Yeah, so I try not to come up with too many new methodologies. I think that's dangerous. I think this shouldn't be seen as an either or this should just be seen as something we can think of in additionally. I, through my career, have done this kind of internally, implicitly. And, you know, that's a great place to start because you can build that out in your own notes. If you want to bring this into your teams, you can help. The UN has done quite a lot of work bringing systems thinking into how they structure their projects, and you can learn about that online. But I also believe that there are, like, the mapping tools, for instance, the connection circles, are or even just drawing lines between the different components within a system, or the different stakeholders within a system, or actors. They may be human, they may not be human, but to understand the interrelatedness of things. And I think that a simple kind of workshop or exercise, just to make sure that you're focusing in the right place, and that you're seeing the elephant for what it is probably the biggest part of this, right? So I don't say upend your day-to-day work or your methodologies or anything like that, but help people understand, are we solving the right problem? And what are the second order implications of the problem, of the solution that we are looking to solve the problem with?
Thanks a lot for answering this. I think we have some questions on Zoom, so I don't know if Sam wants to unmute or ask them. If not, then yeah, I'm happy to ask them. So yeah, one of the questions is, how would you recommend we learn more about system thinking beyond the books or the resources you have mentioned?
Yeah, it's a good question. So there is no design sprint for systems thinking. There are no introductory methodologies for introducing systems thinking into your teams. You know, if you're interested in building one of those, come and talk to me. I would be very interested. But nothing like that exists at the moment. This is something I think, you know, it's worthwhile. I mean, it came up as part of my master's. I don't think you need to go back to school to learn this stuff. I really think you can work with a book like Meadows' primer on system thinking in systems, and to use that. And then the rest, there's stuff around the web, but there is no, unless you're in an organization that sees value, like the United Nations in systems thinking, there's no like workshops that are easy. There are, however, foundations or institutions for helping people think in systems thinking ways. but I haven't seen them active within, at least within the software environment in Germany or in Berlin, where I'm based, at least. So it's a little bit of how to help yourself.
Yeah, that's interesting to know, and thank you for being willing to help if anyone wants to reach out to you. So I see another question from Sam. I think it's kind of related. So do you have any tips for building systems thinking into your day-to-day work, making sure that this happens and the team doesn't neglect it in favor of some other urgent talks?
Yeah, I mean, this is a trade-off between urgent and important, right? And I think, if you have the capacity at the beginning of a project, when you're doing definition or you're doing discovery or you're doing learning, this is the time where you can spend on really understanding the basis for that. It slots in very cleanly with ways that we do kind of discovery at the moment, but it helps just add in additional layers to that. So from my perspective, like I said, I try not to force this on people in my team. I try to do it in my own time personally, and then I ask questions based on the responses that come up in my own thinking. If you want to do it as a team, like I said, then just go through something like the Checklin methodology and make sure that what it is you're building actually meets the transformational aims that you have and the mental models that you have based on the discovery that you had. So we're already doing the discovery. It's just that next bit, which is trying to understand a little bit more of the context of the system within that discovery happens, and then understand how that will what the second order impacts of that will be, right? So you're just making sure that what you're building has the right effect over time.
Yeah, thanks a lot for answering this. I hope this helps, Sam. So we have some compliments on Zoom. It was a great talk, Ben, big fan of the topic. So this is cool. Mirella. We have one from Mikhail, interesting topic, and he's thanking you. So yeah, everyone liked the topic, but as you mentioned, it's a bit difficult to find resources and to incorporate it in day-to-day lives. But yeah, I think that should be it. I don't see any more questions, and we are also on time. So thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us and for your questions. And thanks, Ben, for the presentation and the insights you gave on this topic. So I'd also like to thank other audiences who joined us on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, or LinkedIn. And thanks again, and see you next time.
Thank you very much.